of then please use the chat function to do that, and we'll make sure that we pick those up as we go through. I think that's all really for the housekeeping point. So I shall turn now to our guests. We have three, as I say, distinguished guests from the GOC, the General Optical Council. So I'll ask the guests, the speakers, to introduce themselves and turn first of all to Anne. So Anne, welcome.
Thank you very much, Alistair, and good evening, everyone. My name is Anne Wright, and I'm the chair of the General Optical Council, and I'm a lay chair, so a lay member and the chair of the GOC.
Great, thank you, Anne. So Leonie.
Thank you very much, Alistair, and good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you all. My name is Leonie Milliner, and I have the great privilege to be the Chief Executive and Registrar at the General Optical Council.
Okay, thank you, Leonie. And finally, welcome to William.
Evening, Alistair. Hello, everyone. My name is William Stockdale. I'm a DO-CLO and a Registrant Council member at the GOC. I only joined in January this year, so I'm the new person there. And I went through the process that hopefully you're about to a year ago.
Okay, great. Thank you, William. So I've got some questions which I'm going to go through with our panel this evening. And before we get into the specifics of what the role of being a council member involves, I'm just going to invite Anne to set the scene, really, and just start by explaining, the role of the GOC Council, and then also how the council works with Leonie as the CEO and her executive team. So, yeah, Anne, could I turn to you first, just to set the scene for us?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'll try and do that. And I mean, there's so much I could say. I won't say it all. And if there's any time for questions at the end, happy to answer any. So the council is effectively the non-executive board of the GOC. It can be a bit confusing, the double title, General Optical Council. So I'm the chair of the council of the General Optical Council, and we really are the non-executive board. We are 12 members. We're appointed by the Privy Council, and the constitution of the council is laid down very clearly and very specifically in the Act, in statute. So we have 6 lay members and 6 registrant members, so dispensing opticians and optometrists. And we also, within that number, within the 12, we need to include someone from each of the devolved administrations. So that's an important part of our recruitment and our succession planning. William, as he said, is the newest member of the council, is from Northern Ireland, works in Northern Ireland. And we actually currently have 2 members from Northern Ireland. So that's what we are, and what we're here to do as a council is to oversee the GOC. A lot of the work is, of course, delegated to Leonie and the executive, and I'll come back to that. But the role of the council, very specifically as the non-executive board, is, as you might expect if you've had any experience of boards of one kind or another, is to set the strategic direction for the council, approve the strategic plan, the business plans, the budgets, and so on, and to make sure that the organisation runs effectively. To do that, we have a number of committees, such as the Audit Risk and Finance Committee, for example, a Nominations Committee and a Remuneration Committee. But beyond those corporate aspects, really, of course, what we are overseeing is the regulation of the professions in the interests of patient safety and protecting the public. So we're here to maintain standards, to admit people to the register, and to address issues if anything goes wrong. And also, very, very importantly, to approve all the standards and then therefore approve the institutions that can run out the programs that qualify people to register as a dispensing optician or an optometrist. The way we work is mainly through meetings of one kind or another, full council meetings, both strictly confidential and public council meetings, and the various committees. The statutory committees we have are Companies Committee, which is, as it sounds, Standards Committee, Education and Registration, to cover those key statutory responsibilities and duties that we have. We tend to meet about 4 times a year for the formal meetings, but in addition to that, we have strategy days and development days and so on. and also informal council catch-ups, which are to keep everybody up to speed, because obviously it's a very rapidly moving picture in the sector, and we need to keep people up to date with that. So the way we work with the executive is we all work very much together and pretty closely together. But Leonie is in charge. She has a senior management team. We have, Leonie will tell you, I'm sure, a bit about how many people we have. And in addition, on the non-executive side, in addition to the council members, of course, there are all the members of our committees who we recruit, including lay members and registrant members. So that's really the way we work. I should also say that we are actually also a charity. So we actually report to the Charities Commission. We're have their governance, as well as through the PSA, we're responsible to lay our reports to the Privy Council and so on. So it's quite a hefty agenda that we have and quite a lot to do. This is very similar to all of the professional healthcare regulators. There are quite a lot of us covering various professions, but it's very much the same. So we have the same range of duties, although we're one of the smaller, though not the smallest, of the regulators. The largest is the Nursing and Midwifery Council, which has, I've forgotten how many now, about 780,000 registrants, I think, as opposed to around 30,000 for us, including students. And we register individual, we regulate individual professionals, companies, some companies, Leonie will explain that a bit further possibly, and also students. I think I'll stop there, Alistair. I'm sure there'll be other questions and other things I should have said, but we can come back to that.
Well, thank you, Anna. That's a really comprehensive account, really, of the role of the council and the way you operate. So thank you for that. I mean, you did mention at the start that you're the lay chair of the council, so you're not a dispensing optician or an optometrist. So, I mean, perhaps you could give us an idea of what you really enjoy about the role. You know, what's satisfying about it.
Well, I really enjoy it, Alistair. It feels hugely worthwhile, because we're there obviously for the profession, but also for patients, and because eye care, as we all know, is a really important part of overall healthcare, and we need to promote that with ever increasing challenges and complexities. So it's a world of great change, as it is for everybody, and that makes it really interesting and exciting. So I know I made it sound a bit corporate, but in fact, of course, there are huge and interesting debates we have, as we a little while ago wrote round and lots of consultations asking people in the sector and the professional bodies and our sector stakeholders how they see the future for eye care and for the professions. So a lot of discussions around those kinds of topics, and some really, really important ones. But I'd also want to say to people, because this is about wanting to join the council, that it is also extremely enjoyable. I think I'm really, really fortunate to have a wonderful council, and everyone is really committed. We work very well together. We have a terrific executive team where we also work together too, and we have quite a lot of fun. So it's not at all a dry activity. It's just extremely enjoyable. It's worthwhile, and I'm really very fortunate to be in the role.
Thank you, Anne. I think it's really helpful to understand, that sort of personal dimension to this, and what you find rewarding about the role. So thank you for that. I'll turn to William now. So William, you said that you joined the council, I think, or probably about a year ago. You were in the position of thinking of applying. So, I mean, if you can think back that far, what was your motivation? What was going through your mind when you were putting your application together?
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Yeah, I was going to look up the date actually of my interview. It would have been about this time last year. So what had sort of led me to apply? I've been a qualified DOCLO for, it frightens me, 36 years now. And over that time, I've had a number of roles and done a number of different jobs. Just prior to the GOC, I was chair of Optometry Northern Ireland, and I was chaired during COVID, which actually I thought was a fantastic time to be chair, because it gave me great opportunity to work with the Department of Health, with professional bodies, and with the GOC. We were trying to obviously protect practitioners, keep practices open, and deliver a service for the public. at the very start in April 2020, when we didn't know exactly what would happen if you caught COVID. So the work that was being done then and the work that I saw the GOC do was fascinating. And the speed of response that we got in Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England from the GOC was exactly what we needed. My time came to an end as chair, and I was looking for another way in which I could stay involved. I wanted to keep that sort of role of trying to shape what ICAR could be for the public for the future. And the GOC is the perfect place for that. It does set the agenda, it does set the future, it does set the education, everything to do with what we will do in optometry is pretty much set by the GOC. So for me, it was the perfect place to apply to. And I was very fortunate to get the role and started in January of this year.
Okay, thank you. So you joined the council in January. So it'd be really interesting to know how you found it, really. How have you been able to contribute to the GOC's work? And I mean, it's worth just saying, linking to what Anne was saying earlier, that the GOC's role is to protect the public. So you're not there to represent dispensing opticians, but obviously you're able to bring your perspective and your experience to the GOC's work. So perhaps you could just tell us a bit more about that.
Sure, yeah. I think that's something that we all have to understand. The GOC exists for the public and for the public protection and to deliver ICAR for the public. To do that, it has to work with the profession. It has to understand the profession. And as Anne has said, there's 12 council members. The 6 lay bring huge expertise in a different field, if you like. They bring accountancy, they bring legal, they bring that side to the council. The 6 registrants bring knowledge of the profession. So in no way are we there to represent dispensing optics or optoms, or we're not there to represent, but we are there to show the challenges to the profession, to what may or may not work, because ultimately it's only if all that comes together that we can actually continue to deliver for the public. And we're in a time of rapid change at the moment with technology and the way in which ICAR may be delivered. It brings huge opportunity and it brings huge risk. And really, I think it's the role of the 6 lay, or of the 6 registrants rather, to put forward what those risks and opportunities might be. It's a fantastic place to be. It's interesting, it's stimulating, it's very challenging. It does challenge your own perceptions of what you think you should be as a practitioner, as a service provider. So it stimulates and it challenges your own preconceptions. Anne has said, very, very collaborative. The discussions are open and frank, and really good, really, really good. The work itself, in terms of what it actually involves, it's sort of headlined as being 2 to 3 days a month, and that would be pretty accurate. That's the sort of time commitment that there is. It does come in waves. So there's times when there's less to do, and then you might find a month when there's 5-6 days commitment that month. So it does sort of peak and trough a little bit. Anne has already said we have our sort of quarterly council meetings, which is 2 days. There's a little bit of prep work for that, quite a bit of reading in advance, so that you're prepared for that meeting. Then there's other committee work that we would take part in. And then there's almost anything else that you want to pop your hand up for. So if you see something happening in a particular area, you can go, I would be interested in that. And then you can get involved. But overall, it does run to about the 2 to 3 days a month, and extremely well supported by the senior management team at the GOC.
Okay, thank you, William. So, I mean, you're a CLO, you're involved in running a business, and I'm guessing that many of the people who've joined the webinar this evening will, have different roles that they play. And
yeah,
I mean, you've talked a bit about the time commitment, but I mean, in practice, have you been able to juggle your different commitments? Has that been manageable?
It has been. It has been. I think we have a we have a schedule of meetings that now runs to 2027. So I can tell you which meeting we're having in November of 2027 and what day it's on. So from that point of view, extremely well organized. I'm lucky, I'm self-employed. So I can obviously adjust my timetable to suit. If there's a meeting that I want to attend, I can allow for that. I think if you're employed, you would need to have a good conversation with your employer to make sure that they're supportive of this. There will be a time commitment. There will be time out of the day job. But that should actually pay back massively for both the individual and for the company itself. It's a hugely developmental role. So I think for anybody that is employed, have a word with your employer, get their backing for it. And I think everybody benefits. But it's like anything else, we all do multiple things in our lives. And it's just a case of knowing that you have that time element. As I say, it's well planned in advance. And yeah, that hasn't caused any problems at all.
Great. Okay, well, that's good to know. And I'm going to turn to Leonie now, because we've talked about the role of the council and what being a council member involves. But I think what would be really helpful, Leonie, would be to give people a sense of the kind of issues that you're going to be working on in the next few years. So what are the issues that council members will be debating and making decisions about?
Thank you, Alistair. And it's a hugely exciting time to join the Council of the General Optical Council right now, and I'll explain why in a moment. I think what is really important to remember, as Anne has described, is we are a creature of statute. We are a registered charity, and therefore, to a certain extent, we are limited in what we can do. We're not as fleet as foot as, say, a professional body or a third sector charity. But within the confines of our Act, the discharge of our regulatory responsibilities is actually a really interesting and intellectually stimulating environment in which to work. So we're currently in year 4 of our 5-year strategic plan. That strategic plan is called Fit for the Future, and it's published on our website. So if you are interested in applying, and particularly if you are invited to interview, I would recommend that you read our 5-year strategic plan. And within that strategic plan, there are a number of really exciting projects. First of all, there's a suite of digital transformation projects, which are very much about positioning us ready for the next strategic planning period. So that's delivering projects like a new case management system for our fitness to practice department, a new all singing, all dancing My GOC, which I'm sure you regularly interface with, a new My CPD, which will be mobile friendly, etc. So there's that sort of internal change piece, which if that's the type of thing that you're interested in or have expertise in, we'll be really keen to hear from you. We then have another set of projects, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, which are now coming to fruition. And that's around enhancing the professional capability of the professions that we regulate, so that you, in the deployment of your professional skills, are better able to meet patient and public needs. So as you will know, 18 months ago, we transformed CET into CPD, and that's a process of continuous improvement. So we're now looking forward to the next CPD cycle, which will start in January 2025, and thinking through what that might be. So there's a design piece to do there. But there's also some work in train in relation to engaging and motivating registrants to fully exploit all of the new innovations that are within our current CPD cycle. So that's about upskilling our existing cadre of professionals. You'll probably all have heard of the Education Strategic Review and our new education and training requirements, making really good progress there in relation to adapting all of the GOC approved qualifications in optometry, in dispensing optics, for contact lens opticians, and in therapeutic prescribing. But again, there's a lot of work to do in that space. And I think what we then need to turn our attention to is to work with others, to seek to influence and advise others, to ensure that those new professional professional skills, there's new clinical skills that our graduates will be entering the workplace with, will be fully utilised by those commissioning optical services. So there's a lot of work that we anticipate doing in the public affairs, parliamentary affairs, communication space that we're building our team and our expertise to be able to deliver. A lot of this rests internally on us having a well-skilled workforce within the GOC. We're about 110 strong in terms of the staff that we have in our offices in Old Bailey, and then we have about another 150 to 175 individuals engaged in our business as members, like council members, committee members, FTP panel members, but also as workers and contractors. So individuals who are engaged in some aspect of our business on an irregular basis, for example, as an education visitor visiting universities alongside their day job. So we have a program of investment in skill development and capacity building within the organisation as well as within the profession. And of course, the one project which will impact upon you all is work to change our Act, our Opticians Act, the underpinning legislation. It is quite old, it's creaking at the seams. Government has indicated its intention to bring on board as part of its regulatory reform agenda what's called a Section 60 order, which will change the Opticians Act and bring us more in line with some of the other regulators that Anne mentioned earlier. Now, we're not quite sure when the Section 60 Act will march over the horizon for the GOC, but we do know that it's probably within the next 5 years or so. So our mission at the moment, in line with our objective, which is to be a world-class regulator, is to be absolutely ready for that opportunity when it emerges. You probably will all be familiar with the call for evidence that we launched last year, and then tracking through various consultations that we've launched as a result of that call for evidence. That's all about preparedness for our new legislative framework. And as part of that, we hope to redesign business regulation. As Anne mentioned earlier, we currently regulate, because of a quirk in our legislation, only about 50% of optical businesses, which represents about 80% of NHS site tests. Our policy position is that all optical businesses who undertake regulated activities ought to be regulated by us. That will require a change in legislation. So lots of really interesting projects, Alistair, lots of policy initiatives and lots of opportunities for you as a prospective new council member to get involved and to really make a difference.
Thank you, Leonie. So, I mean, a huge number of really important issues there that you'll be grappling with. So thank you for that insight. I mean, we've heard from Anne and William about their roles as council members, but I mean, it would be really interesting to hear from you, given your perspective as the CEO, what really makes a good council member in your experience?
So there's a really important dimension to the essential criteria that you'll see in the recruitment pack. And by the way, I've popped the link in the chat to the recruitment pack on our website. So do have a look at that after this meeting if you're inspired and encouraged to apply. But there's a really important criteria within that pack that the selection panel will be looking for, and that's being able to see the bigger picture. And I think that's really important from a staff perspective, and I'm sure you all find that in your daily working lives. You can get really engaged in some detail of your work, but it's actually being encouraged to sort of step back and see that bigger picture. And our council members, in particular, our registrant council members, are often really helpful in being able to sort of stimulate that thought and that discussion about, the impact of a particular policy approach, perhaps upon an audience or group that we hadn't previously considered, or bringing to us some dimension of an issue that we hadn't considered, and helping us really to set the scene strategically about the work that we're doing. And I think the second part is actually that sense that we're working in collaboration with our council members. We all have the have a common cause, that is to be a world-class regulator. We're all working towards that objective to protect the public and maintain public confidence in the professions that we regulate. And it's that collaborative approach to governance, which I think is a real strength of the GOC. And certainly one of the reasons why I remain engaged in the business, because you see the impact of that working relationship day to day. As Anne and William has described, there are lots of opportunities for council members to get involved, bringing that bigger picture, that strategic piece to bear on our daily work. And that can be through council members leading, chairing a committee or sitting on a committee and bringing a degree of scrutiny to our work, a degree of challenge to our work as the executive. From my perspective, that's really helpful and a really vital part of being a council member. And I suppose finally, the vast majority of staff at the GOC aren't clinicians. We're not optometrists or dispensing opticians. We haven't worked in optical practice, and therefore bringing the specific insights of your daily working life, your contacts and the perspectives that you have is absolutely vital to ensure that our work remains sort of grounded in reality.
Excellent, thank you, Leonie. So a great opportunity to use your experience from practice to contribute to the GOC's strategic direction, and also you've emphasised the opportunity to work in a collaborative way with the council, with the executive team as part of the council, and that idea of constructive challenge as well being an important part of the role. Great, okay, so I hope that everyone is now thinking, where do I apply? How do I get on with this? So I'll turn to Anne now, just to ask you really, what advice would you give, as the GOC's chair, for anyone who is now interested in applying? What would you say to them?
Well, I think I thought first of all say thank you all for showing an interest in the first place in coming to this webinar, and also a huge thanks to Alistair and Abdo for organising it. We're really very, very appreciative. Thank you very much. So if what you've heard does interest you, the first thing to do is, as Leonie has already mentioned, is to get hold of the recruitment pack and have a good read about that. You'll see in there that this says a lot about what we will have heard tonight, about what we are, what we do, who we are, and so on, as well as, how do I apply? How do you apply? And it is really worth reading, fully, carefully, to make sure that if you are going to apply, you are giving us what we need to be able to look at your application. For further information, I think go to our website. Leonie's already mentioned the strategic plan, our strategy, but there are lots of other things there, like annual reports and so on, which will give you glimpses into what we do and the range of activity and how really wide and far-reaching it is. So I think that's the thing, is just get yourself a bit of information and then think about it. As William said, think about your own role, about how that would suit you, how you would be able to meet the commitment that is required, and then fully enjoy and value and get your own reward from being part of the council. So that when you've done that, then you will need to put in an application. We're going to repeat the deadline a few times this evening to make sure it's midnight on the 19th of November. So there's plenty of time yet to get yourself together and get your information together and fill in that form. I think the really important thing is to actually look at what we are looking for. Leonie described some of those things, like seeing the bigger picture. There are lots of things in what's called the person specification, with the criteria what we will be looking for. And they relate to a lot of things we've been saying this evening, like, being able to prepare for meetings, you understand there'd be quite big bundles of papers to read and so on, contribute to the team, contribute to the discussions and decision making and so on. All of those things are what we'll be looking for. So we will ask you to provide a CV, but also to make a kind of statement of application. This time round, we provided a kind of hopefully an easy to use form to encourage people to make sure that they do actually answer each of these criteria. It's really, really important for the appointment panel, which I chair, that people do fill in everything. And it will be asking you not just about what you've done, but in a way what you've got out of it, what your what your competences are, and you know, those outcomes of what you do. So looking for examples. Don't be afraid to use examples, either from your professional life or for your wide activities. You can do all of that in your application. It's not too onerous. I mean, I think there are some word limits in each bit, so you didn't have to write screeds and screeds and screeds. But I would say that if you are going to, allow yourself good time to be able to think about that, and try not to get it in 1 minute before midnight, just in case the IT breaks down, for one thing. So I think I'll leave it there for the moment, and maybe questions, Alistair.
Thank you, Anne. So you've highlighted the need to really demonstrate how you meet the essential criteria for the role, and all of that is set out in the recruitment pack, and Leonie's already posted the link to that. And I think using those examples as well. So it'd be good for people to start thinking about those examples now, and to hone those, you know, rather than leaving it to 1 minute to midnight, as you say. So I'll turn to William now. I mean, we've discussed the fact that you've been through this process relatively recently. So yeah, could I ask you what tips you would give anyone who is now thinking of applying? What would you say?
Okay, thanks, Alistair. I think probably the first one is start tonight. Anne has said the closing date is 3 weeks away, effectively Sunday night, 3 weeks away. It will take you 3 weeks to apply, so start tonight. It's a completely different process to what we're probably used to as dispensing opticians and contact lens opticians. This is a competency-based approach, so it's not about, are you a good DO? Are you a good CLO? Are you a nice person? It's not about that. It's competency based. So you have the 7 essential criteria and the 3 desirable. Make sure you fit those, and make sure you explain across those 10 criteria why you fit this role. I'm sure some people have done this in the past and have applied for other roles for the competency based, but if you haven't, Google it, have a look on YouTube. There are no end of videos on YouTube about how do you apply for a competency based role. They use a technique called the STAR model. So, if you're talking about an EDI issue, you need to talk about the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And you want to break your 300 words down into those 4 categories. If you want to add a 5th one, there's no harm. It's an extra R on the end, and that's a reflection, because not everything you do in life works as well as you expected it to. And again, that's still a perfectly valid example to say, this was the situation, this is what I did, this was the result, and maybe it wasn't ideal, maybe it wasn't exactly what I wanted. So your reflection is how you would have done it differently the next time. But your 10 responses to those 10 criteria should follow the STAR model each time. So as I said, it's different from what we're used to. I found when I applied that I sort of wrote out my 10 situations and then rewrote them and then read them again and probably binned 1 or 2 and substituted it for something else. And I would say if you're starting tonight, it will take you the best part of 3 weeks to do that and craft it and make it as good as you possibly can make it. You probably over that 3 week period will decide to not bother, to give up, to go, that isn't for me. I've got better things to do on a Thursday night. Don't do that. Keep at it. I had a great advantage of my wife, who kept kicking me every time I said I wasn't going to apply. And she kept telling me to get on with it, basically. And I did. And I put the application in, got selected for interview, had my interview, and I came away from the interview going, I really want this. I really hope I get this. And I think once you've put the effort in, you realize what the potential of the role is. So the next 3 weeks, I promise you, will be tough. You will hate it at some points. Keep at it. Put an application in. I think if you've had the motivation to come to this tonight, you've obviously looked at the candidate pack and you've went, yeah, I could meet that and I could do this. So I think that is the thing to get on with it. Going back to the application or the candidate pack, there is so much information in that I think Anne's already said you want to look at and weave into your 10 responses. There are points in there about things like the Nolan principles for public life. Try to weave that in. So read the candidate pack multiple times and look for the things that the GOC are looking for in your application and make sure you weave them in. I guarantee that if you apply and you get the role, you'll be very glad you did. It is definitely worthwhile. At the moment, it's 5 optoms and me. So I would love to have a second dispensing optician to sit alongside me. It would be fantastic. And I think it would also balance us. So I would be very, very keen to see a DO successful in this competition.
Right, thank you, William. So, I mean, loads of advice there, lots to digest. But if I pick out some of the points that I took from what you said, I mean, the first thing is, start now. Give yourself time to read all the information, to digest that, and also time to develop your application, the examples you're going to use. And you gave a good tip on a framework you can use to present those examples in a systematic way, that STAR technique that you mentioned. And I think stick with it as well. That was one of your other bits of advice. So, it might be a different kind of application to what you're used to, but, the guidance is there. Work through that, give yourself time, and it's a really rewarding role that is worth applying for, worth putting some effort into. So thank you, William. And then Leonie, I'll turn to you, and just this builds really on one of the points that William was making. So there are 6 registrant council members at the moment, and 5 optometrists and only 1 dispensing optician. So, I mean, perhaps you could just reassure people that you are sort of open-minded about, who you will look to appoint this time around. It's a thorough recruitment process, and, all applications are considered on merit. So perhaps you could just pick this up.
I can indeed, Alistair, and I would like to assure everyone on the call that this is a level playing field in terms of the recruitment process. And in actual fact, it's not the GOC who makes the appointment. This is a public appointment, and it's actually made by the Privy Council. So we at the GOC administer, if you like, the recruitment process. But at the end of the day, it's our recommendation that is approved by the Privy Council. And there's an element of scrutiny as well by the Professional Standards Authority. They're the regulator, the government regulator that regulates and inspects us. And they also advise the Privy Council on the merit of our recommendation. So it's a fairly high status position, being a council member. And from that perspective, the GOC staff don't get involved in the recruitment process. So I'm not part of the recruitment panel. That panel is chaired by Anne as our chair of council, and it has 2 other council members on it. So Claire Minchington and Frank Monroe. You can read their biographies on our website. And we also have an independent member of the recruitment panel, Ranjit Sondai, who has a specific responsibility of reporting directly to the PSA and the Privy Council on the robustness and the independence of that recruitment process. So I just want to underline really what William said, in that your success will depend upon your ability to describe your prior experience in relation to the 10 essential and desirable criteria that outlined on the recruitment pack. And it's just that information that the recruitment panel will be looking at. We ask you to fill out the EDI monitoring form, but nobody sees that within the GOC. It goes to a completely separate person within the GOC, and that information is stored separately. So the only information that the panel see is your CV and then the information you include in the application form. And I would encourage you, when you're filling in the application form, to draw on all parts of your professional life. And I can see, Diane, you've put a message in the chat that you're an elected councillor. I'm assuming that means a local authority councillor, although you might mean a councillor in a professional body. But that type of experience, for example, might give you some really rich information to add to your application form, for example, around EDI or around corporate governance, the assessment and management of risk, for example. You might be involved in, I don't know, a local sporting association or scout group. You might have some responsibilities in a residents association, for example. So I would really encourage you not just to draw from your professional life, but all aspects of your life and experience to be able to populate that application form with a sort of a richness and diversity of experience that I'm sure the panel will be looking for. And I'm really keen. I have no influence over the process, but I'm really hopeful that we could have another dispensing optician to sit alongside William on our governing council, because really it's that richness of diversity and diversity of experiences that our registrants bring to our council that is so important to make sure that the decisions that council make and the advice that council committees give to council are robust and reflective of the reality of optical practice that's out there, and bring a richness to our decision making that is absolutely essential to ensure that those decisions are robust.
Thank you, Leonie. So that's really good to hear. And I mean, hopefully, Diane, Leonie's answered your question as well. I mean, I would say if anyone else has any questions, please do post those in the chat, and we'll come to those shortly. And another thing to say before I turn to Anne is that if anyone would like to share their application with me in draft, I'd be very happy to look at that and give you some feedback. So, please feel free to take me up on that offer. So, I mean, Anne, I'll turn to you now just to say a bit more about the recruitment process. I mean, it would be good to just remind people, what they need to do to apply and by when. But then perhaps if you could go on and talk about the process beyond that. Leonie's talked about the interview panel, but to give people a sense of, what the process involves and how long it takes. So over to you, Anne.
Yes, well, as I'll repeat again, that the deadline is midnight on the 19th of November. And as William said, get started pretty quickly, even if not just this evening, but pretty quickly. If not this evening, then tomorrow. Yes, so the recruitment pack has all the information about how to apply. It'll give you the forms that you need to fill in and send to us by that deadline. What happens then is that the appointment panel, which Leonie has also described, will look at all of the applications. If we get a huge number, and we have in the past had really pretty good responses, so we hope we'll get one this time, sometimes that a couple of the appointment panel will do a pre-sift, as it were. They wouldn't cut anybody out at that point, but they'll just go through and get sort of so they contribute to the progress towards shortlisting. Then everybody will shortlist and will actually look at every application, every answer in every application, which is why it's so important to make sure you do fill in the form completely. And at that point, then we will meet and we will look at what we think about each of the candidates and rank them, not completely, but look at which ones we would like to interview. So at that point, we will be deciding on a number of candidates to bring forward for interview. It's not predetermined how many there would be, but typically for a single appointment, there might be between 4 and 6. But given that in this registered case, of course, there are 2 professions, it might well be that we would like to see some more people than that, and we really can't predict that. So in our schedule for the process, we have set aside potentially 2 days for final interviews, and those would take place at the beginning of the new year, in the first 2 weeks of January. That's helpful for you to know. If people can't make those dates, it's obviously really important to indicate that when you apply, so we can take that into account. because it's not completely finalised yet. So that's the phase. There's a first stage of shortlisting. We look through and we'll have a number of people, some possibly between say 4 and 8 typically, who we would like to interview. We will be given information about the interview, but it's there also in the pack. The interview would be very similar in its competency based, so it would be quite similar. It would also address the criteria, the essential and the desirable criteria. You would have an opportunity to present your evidence on that. And at that point, you might want to use the same examples you've used, or you might want to vary it and give new examples in relation to those questions. The interview is typically about, say, 45 minutes, something like that. There's an opportunity to ask the panel questions that you have at the end, and also to discuss any particular potential conflicts of interest you might have. So, for example, if you're on a different board, or if you're on an optical committee or something like that, a different stakeholder body, we might need to discuss, you know, how the appropriate way is of managing that particular interest. Sometimes it might simply be that it's not relevant at all. Sometimes it might be that you might need to think, when a particular decision came up, that you might want to perhaps not to take part in that particular discussion decision. And on very rare occasions, you might need to consider whether you might need to step down from another position if you're willing to do so. And there are indications of that also in the recruitment pack about when that might apply. And we always consult the PSA about that, so we do that objectively as well. So that's how it works. So then that gets us to December. We will let people know, obviously they're not being brought forward for interview. But I would say is that unfortunately we can't interview everybody. There's only one position this particular time, but we will be recruiting again. We have a number of appointments to make over the next 2 years, because about half of our council members reach the end of their term of office next year and the following year. So there will be other opportunities as well. If you were successful offered the position and you wanted to accept that, then we would send our report back to the PSA with that recommendation. As Leonie said, we're not an appointment panel. We call ourselves a recruiting panel. We make the recommendation via the PSA to the Privy Council, and in the end, it's a Privy Council decision and approval and appointment. And we would hope that successful candidate would be able to take up post in the spring, because the person who's leaving us, who's David Parkins, who is a registrant, who's an optometrist, ends his term of office in the middle of March. So we would have then the successful candidate would receive a full induction. So you get to know everybody, get to know all the processes, and can start to take up the role. I mean, I hope it sounds exciting, because it is, and it's not just putting an application together. I mean, it will, if you're interested and if you're successful, it will affect your life considerably for the next between 4 and 8 years. So it's a big opportunity, as well as being a big challenge. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. So thank you for explaining the process so clearly. I would just remind people, you know, if you do have any questions, please post those in the chat, and we'll pick up any further questions people have. And I'll turn to Leonie and William in a moment to see if they have any final thoughts they'd like to share. But I mean, one observation I would make is that I mean, Anne has already mentioned that there will be other vacancies that crop up on the GOC Council in the coming years. And you talked earlier, Anne, about the different committees the GOC has. There are other opportunities to serve on the advisory committees, and you know, you ran a campaign recently to recruit people to join your hearing panel, and appointed 10 dispensing opticians following that process. So I think there's obviously only one vacancy that we're talking about here. Not everyone can be successful, but it will be a really useful experience, you know, just submitting an application, and would set you in good stead if you decide to, you know, apply for a further opportunity in the future. So I think that's just something to bear in mind when you're thinking about this. I'll turn now to William, just to see if there's anything further you'd like to say.
Thanks, Alistair. I was pretty much going to say what you have just said. Before I applied for this last year, I had no idea of the number of roles that exist within the GOC, the number of member roles that there are. I'm on the nominations committee, so I work with Anne setting up all of these. As you say, 10 people recruited very recently, 2 about a month or 2 before that. So going over the next 1, 2, 3 years, there will be multiple opportunities for everybody on the call tonight to get involved. The work that you put into this application, you can use for your next application if you're not successful with this one. So the process is tough, but it's also extremely developmental in itself. The end result for the person who gets the role, it is just such a fantastic opportunity. You get to sit and discuss the future of the profession, the regulation, the education, all of the different aspects, the standards, with another 11 people, council members, and also all of the senior management team. And it is just such a fantastic opportunity, both for your own development, but obviously to contribute to the profession that we're all part of, to see it going in the right direction and delivering, I have to say, for the profession, but also for the public. So I think it's a brilliant opportunity. If you're on tonight, grab it with 2 hands and get your application in.
Thank you, William. And yeah, finally to you, Leonie. I'll give
Thank
you
you.
the last word.
Oh gosh, what a privilege. I was just looking on our website actually, because what I'll do is I'll post in the chat a link to where our council papers are published, because I think if you have 10 minutes or so just to graze the last set of council papers, that will give you a really good indication of the variety of different issues that council deal with at its quarterly public council meetings, and that's always preceded by a private meeting of council which deals with, if you like, the more business focused and confidential items of council. I'm sort of assuming that everybody here is probably on Twitter and LinkedIn, but that's also a really good way of keeping in touch with the GOC between now and the closing date, and then if you're invited to interview, in terms of preparation for the interview. So have a look at what we publish on Twitter, particularly recent consultations, for example. That gives you a good flavour of our policy work. And finally, I'd just like to echo Anne's thanks, Alistair, for taking the effort to organise these and the previous evening webinars as well. It's a really good innovation and a great indication of, like, the collaborative effort that exists right across the sector, and we enjoy our working relationship with ABDO and are enormously grateful for opportunities like this where we can talk about our work. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Leonie. I mean, we've been very pleased to support the campaign, so our pleasure, really. And I mean, there are no further questions, but I'm really hoping that means that we've done a good job of anticipating the questions people might have, and have answered those in the course of the evening. So yeah, thank you again to Anne, to William and Leonie for your contributions, and I mean, thank you everyone who's taken the time to join this evening. I really hope you found it useful, interesting, and inspiring. I hope you're now inspired to put in your application. Yeah, so thank you everyone, and there's information in the chat. Leonie's posted a number of links for you to follow there. And as I say, if anyone would like any feedback on their applications as they get started on those, then please get in touch. So okay, I'll bring things to a close now, and yeah, good night, and bye for now.
Bye,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Lovely to see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.